In 1985, Karen Schultz took a picture of her triplets, Peter, Mark, and Dennis, on their first birthday. Little did she know this one photo would lead to 33 years of the boys posing together, showing how much their personalities changed throughout the years from the first picture to the last. It's hard not to cry at the end. The Triplets photo series began in 1985. During their first birthday, the tradition was actually unintentional, with their mom, Karen, just wanting to snap a picture of her boys while their tiny hands were stuffing cake into their mouths. But posing in front of a birthday sign soon became an annual occurrence for Peter, Mark, and Dennis. When their second birthday came around, Karen made another sign for the boys. This time they were a bit more aware of what was going on around them and were more than happy to line up and pose for the camera. With their blonde hair and soccer jerseys, the 2-year-old triplets were all smiles. It wasn't until their third birthday that Karen decided to make the annual birthday picture a tradition with her boys. In fact, they were the inspiration. As they were waiting for their picture to be taken together with their matching Snoopy sweaters, Peter, Mark, and Dennis sat on the couch with their signs, smiling wide for the camera. When it was finally Peter, Mark, and Dennis's fourth birthday, the triplets were headed to their first year of school. But the tradition went on with their birthday sign at the ready and matching outfits. At least 2 of them matched. This was also the birthday that their personalities began shining through, with Mark and Dennis on top of a playset and Peter lying down. Still, all 3 boys were smiling. Birthday number 5 was a bit sad for the boys, as seen by the concern on their faces. This is the year their mother, Karen, was battling Parkinson's disease. Still, she wanted to celebrate her triplets' 5th birthday with their annual traditions. She made her sons their cake, matching sweaters, and took a picture of them with their yearly sign. But they still held strong to their birthday tradition. Their 6th birthday had the boys smiling once again. All 3 of them were doing well in school. They were making friends, and their mom was doing a bit better. They were once again excited to take their annual birthday picture. Of course, what's a birthday picture without matching sweaters? The boys were growing up, and when it was finally time to take their traditional birthday picture, something changed. It was their 7th birthday, and Peter, Mark, and Dennis did something a bit different. This was the first year the triplets didn't wear matching sweaters. Instead, they opted for overalls with different sweaters underneath. When the boys' 8th birthday rolled around, they stuck with their new tradition of different sweaters. While the polka dot pattern was the same, they decided to sport different colors. Sadly, a month after their birthday photo was taken, their house burned to the ground, thanks to a ghastly, difficult time for everyone. For a while, the boys and their mom lived with their neighbor, Wilma. She actually helped Karen with the boys' 9th birthday sign for their photo. Soon, the family moved to a trailer, waiting until their home was rebuilt. It would take a year, but the boys and their mom eventually were able to move back in. They looked so different as teenagers. The boys were growing up so fast. When it was time for their 10th birthday, they decided to try something new. Peter had saved up his money and bought a camera, so setting the timer, the boys grabbed their annual birthday sign and took their traditional photo with Peter's new camera. He might have just turned 11, but Peter was apparently a little ladies' man. He was the first brother to have a girlfriend. He and Eva would meet after school, while Peter and Dennis ran around causing a bit of trouble, as, 11-year-olds do. Even so, they snapped their annual picture with 2 straight faces and one with a sarcastic-looking smirk. Birthday number 12 was a bit difficult for the triplets. While Mark and Dennis were getting ready to transition into high school, Peter was in and out of doctor's offices that year. He was diagnosed with epilepsy and would have random seizures that would keep him out of school for days at a time. Even so, the brothers took their annual picture and were all smiles. Unfortunately, when the brother's 13th birthday came around, Peter's parents decided it would be best for him to stay back in elementary school while his brothers made their way to high school. New experiences brought on by his seizures and moving from one school to another definitely fit the bill. By the time the boys turned 14, Peter was ready to join his brothers in high school. As one of the smartest kids in class, Peter seamlessly transitioned from one school to the other. It was also made easier now that he was back with his brothers, now that they're full-fledged teens. Though their annual picture saw the boys with tight-lipped smiles, teenage angst, the year of the necklace, is coming up next. By the time the brothers turned 15, Peter was put back in the same grade as Mark and Dennis. He was very smart and willing to put into work, something that clearly paid off. Their annual picture came and went, and this time they wore bead necklaces thrown into the mix. Clearly, it was the 90s. It was clear that the boys were well into their teenage rebellion phase as their 16th birthday came around. In their traditional picture, it looks as though Two of the three triplets decided to do a bit of experimenting with hair dye. On the left, Peter is rocking some red locks, while Mark dyed his hair dark black. The boys were still making their way through high school when it came time to celebrate their 17th birthday. It was also the time where they decided to give up the hair dye and long hair. Each of the boys actually sported a pretty similar look in their annual photo, including their casual style. The brothers graduated from high school by the time they turned 18. Each of them decided they wanted to go on to higher learning, with Mark wanting to become a teacher and Dennis a sports mascot. Peter, on the other hand, wanted to go to school and study to become an architect. Peter had been safe from epileptic episodes for a few years. Unfortunately, right before the triplets were set to turn 19, he had one of the worst attacks of his life. Thankfully, someone was there to help Peter get through the seizure, but the scar had a lasting effect on Peter's life. During his last episode, Peter developed anxiety about being alone. So by the time the brothers turned 20, Mark and Dennis decided to move to Berlin to be with Peter. They were all over the country by this point, working on their respective studies, but Peter needed them and they didn't hesitate to be there for him. By 26, 2 out of the 3 boys had super long hair, not just Peter, keep going to see their transformation. The brothers were together for their 21st birthday, living and studying their respective courses in Berlin. Even though they were getting into their early 20s, nothing was stopping them from doing their annual birthday photo with a sign they'd had since they were little. The boys posed for yet another picture. When their 22nd birthday rolled around, Peter, Mark, and Dennis were still living and studying in Berlin. Still, they stopped what they were doing and posed once again from their traditional birthday picture. Each of the boys' hair was a bit darker this year, with Peter getting a trim before growing his long locks out. The boys turned 23 in 2008. Finally, they had each completed their studies. It was supposed to be a fun time for them. Sadly, their mom, Karen, recently learned that she had a malignant tumor in her intestines. With hesitation, the 3 boys moved back home to take care of their mother while the boys were taking care of their mother in the house they grew up in. Peter's girlfriend, Susan, also came to help together. All 4 of the kids took care of Karen, and taking care of Karen meant sticking with tradition and snapping a birthday photo of her 3 boys. Even with the ups and downs of their mother's illness, she and the boys were a close-knit group and made the best out of the situation. They were all still living at the house they spent many years growing up in, and Suzanne had moved in full-time. And of course, the boys also took the time to snap their traditional picture when Peter, Mark, and Dennis turned 26. 2 of the 3 brothers had sported very long hair. Peter was even rocking a ponytail and headband, while Mark had solid curly locks almost down to his chin. One thing remained constant, though. The boys grabbed their birthday sign and took a picture. Stay tuned to learn how the boys' 33rd birthday photo becomes their last. Sadly, Karen passed away from colon cancer when the boys turned 27. The boys inherited the house, deciding to live there together since it was plenty big enough, and when Peter and Susan found out they were pregnant, they couldn't have been happier that their child would grow up in the same house as him. Peter and Susan's son, Noah, was born on April 23, 2013, and the 2 parents couldn't have been more thrilled. While Peter was happy and excited to be a father, Mark and Dennis were even more elated about being uncles for the first time. But even in the middle of a huge life event, the brothers still made time for their birthday picture. By the time the brothers turned 29, they were getting into a bit of a routine. Peter was a new father, Mark and Dennis were uncles, and they were all working full-time jobs while living at the house they grew up in. Before they knew it, the 3 of them were going to hit another milestone, their 30s.